The woman was found in her own bedroom. Her two sons, who lived in the same house with her, did not hear or see anything. Detectives launched an investigation, but were unable to find a culprit. Only 38 years later, there was a breakthrough in this matter, but no one was ready for such a truth. Linda Sladen was born in 1950 in the U.S. state of Alabama. She had loving parents and a younger sister, Judy. From an early age, the girl was an aspiring and benevolent goal. She always tried to help others, thanks to which she had many friends. She later married a man named Frank, with whom she had two sons, Jeff and Tim. However, every year more and more problems appeared in this marriage. Frank became addicted to alcohol and began to abuse his wife and children. As a result, Linda left him and her sons and decided to move to Florida. They settled in the city of Lakeland. The woman rented a house in a residential complex on the lake, and from then on she devoted all her time to providing for her sons. Linda got various jobs, but most often she barely had enough money to support her family. Sometimes a woman was even forced to sell her belongings to pay bills. She also couldn't buy a car, forcing her eldest son Jeff to bike to school. The youngest son, Tim, was on the football team, and he often had to ask his coach to take him home so as not to have to walk after practice. Despite financial difficulties, Linda always strived to devote maximum time to her sons. She went on hikes with them, took them to concerts of their favorite bands, and generally tried to make sure their childhood was filled with positive moments. On the evening of September 3, 1981, when Linda was 31 years old, she waited for Tim to train and went with him to a neighbor's house for a small family party. Meanwhile, Jeff arrived home and wanted to have dinner, but there was almost no food in the refrigerator. He got angry with his mother, got on his bike, and rode to his grandparents' house, who lived on the other side of town. Later, when the whole family returned home, Jeff had an argument with his mom about the empty refrigerator, but they eventually said good night to each other and went to bed. The next morning, Linda's sister, who lived in the same complex, went to her house to invite her for a cup of coffee. She knocked on the door, but there was no answer. Thinking that Linda had gone somewhere, the woman turned around and was about to leave when she suddenly noticed that the window in her sister's bedroom was open. She walked up to it, looked inside, and saw Linda lying across the bed. The next second, the woman screamed and ran to the neighbors to call the police. One look at her sister's face was enough for her to understand that she was dead. Detectives arrived at their home and began examining the crime scene. Upon inspection of the crime scene, it became obvious that the killer had entered the bedroom through the window. The woman was violated and strangled. While detectives were working the crime scene, the victim's eldest son woke up from all the noise. Investigators took him outside and told him the tragic news about the death of his mother. After that, they woke up his younger brother and took him to the exit. However, at the very moment when the boy passed by his mother's room, another policeman came out. Through the open door, Tim saw his mother's body and froze in place, until the policeman pulled him away from there. Jeff and Tim, who were 15 and 12 years old respectively at the time, were in deep shock. At first, they simply could not believe that their mother was dead. Later, investigators were able to talk to them, and the brothers said that they did not hear any noise and did not even wake up that night, even though they each had their own room. The detectives found this strange. The building had very good audibility, and given the brutal nature of the murder, there must have been a loud noise coming from the victim's room. The police interviewed neighbors who also did not hear anything. None of the residents of the complex also saw any suspicious people that day. Medical experts examined the victim's body and confirmed that she had been raped. They extracted biological material from the killer, but they were unable to conduct a DNA analysis in those years. Experts also confirmed that Linda died as a result of strangulation. Thus, detectives had to investigate this case with virtually no evidence. The palm print could only help them if they managed to find a suspect and make a comparison. After the murder, the boys went to live with their grandparents. Grandfather was afraid that the criminal would return to remove witnesses, so the family slept in the same room, and he guarded them with a weapon. A few weeks after their mother's funeral, the boys returned to school. Tim has resumed football training. Coach Joseph and the football team supported him. Before the murder of his mother, the young man often drove and picked up Tim from training. After the tragedy, he continued to come for him. The teenager hung a photo of the football team in his bedroom. The boy looked at the photo with pride and remembered his mother, who told him to never give up and strive for his goal. The forensic team investigating the Linda Sladen case was led by Sergeant Edgar Pickett. He found a palm print on the windowsill. The police also collected the criminal's DNA and stored it for many years. DNA testing will begin only in 1984. The first suspect was Linda's ex-husband Frank Sladen. They lived in marriage for 9 years. The man drank a lot and often took his anger out on his wife. On the day of the murder, he had an alibi. The man was at home in Alabama. Linda's boyfriend also turned out to have a solid alibi. The police were also interested in Linda's eldest son. Jeff often had teenage conflicts with his mother, and he was not afraid to talk about them. The teenager was interrogated several times and took a lie detector test twice. Investigators had no leads, so the case stalled for many years. In 1998, Detective Brad Grace reopened the investigation into the Sladen case. He sent the DNA kit for examination. A year later, the crime lab developed a DNA profile of the anonymous killer. Detective Grace took DNA samples from people of interest, including sons and Linda's ex-husband, and sent them for comparison. No matches found. During this time, Frank Sladen managed to return to normal life. He apologized to his sons for his abuse of their mother and was reunited with his family. In 2005, a detective uploaded the DNA profile to the FBI's National Crime Database. This did not bring results. In 2015, after 17 years of working on the Sladen case, he retired. In 2018, new investigators Tammy Hafkick and Russell Hurley sent the DNA kit for a new examination. As a result, specialist Cece Moore developed 3 branches of the killer's family tree, which led her to a man named Joseph Clinton Mills. Detectives learned that police questioned Joseph by telephone in 1981, but the coach was never a suspect. In 1984, Joseph was tried for forging a will. He was not sent to prison, but fingerprint information remained. In the summer of 2019, investigators compared Joseph's 1984 palm print to a palm print taken from a windowsill in 1981, and they were a match. The next day, police secretly removed trash bags from Mills' home. They found an adhesive plaster in one of the bags and sent it to the laboratory for analysis. The DNA was a complete match. At the time of his arrest, Joseph was 58 years old. He was married, had children and grandchildren. The man lived almost his entire life in Kathleen, 30 minutes from where he killed Linda Sladen. In December 2019, during interrogation, Joseph claimed that everything happened with Linda by mutual consent. The police believed that on the day of the murder, Joseph dropped him off near the house, but later returned. The man entered the bedroom when no one was there and hid in the closet. When Linda went to bed, he attacked. Based on all the available evidence, Mills was charged with murder, and the case went to trial. In the state of Florida, the crime was punishable by death. On February 9, 2022, Mills decided to make a plea deal to avoid this fate. He confessed to the murder, but under the terms of the deal, the man could not disclose the details of what he had done. Linda's sons were unhappy with this fact. In the courtroom, Tim shouted at his coach and demanded to know why he took his mother away from him. But the man only remained silent and looked at the floor. It wasn't until he was given the final word that Mills declared, "I'm a good person, and I'm not who they make me out to be." This angered the brothers even more. but ultimately they were grateful to investigators for following through with the case and finally finding the killer. Mills was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Jeff and Tim promised that they would try to live worthy lives and devote themselves to their families, because that's what their mother would have wanted.